But as the only Trump voter here, I don't agree with anything any of you are saying. And the important thing is a new Q poll that came out on April 15th this week that shows the president still has the support of 88% of the Republican Party. Same poll at the end of the Biden term had him at 71%. Trump is immensely popular with the Republican base, despite all of the things you might say. None of you are Trump voters, and that's fine. Yep. But don't speak for Trump voters. We don't agree with what you're saying.
There is a lot of panic in the MAGA world right now as Donald Trump's poll numbers and approval ratings continue to fall. Even some hardcore MAGA supporters now seem to be showing signs of buyer's remorse. We're going to take a look at a panel from Abby Phillips' show where far-right MAGA supporter Joe Borelli completely melts down while never-Trumper S.E. Cupp calls out Trump supporters. And I also have a few thoughts to share on this situation. Let's get into it together.
It's no secret many in MAGA aren't too thrilled with Donald Trump for some portions of the things he's been doing now, from the Epstein files to the economy and now the war. They say he promised to never start. Many of the loudest people who helped get him elected are starting to say they have buyer's remorse. Our friend S.E. had this to say to many of them after the president's threat to wipe out a civilization.
You and your buyer's remorse. Who would listen to you now? Who would listen to you? You got us here. You voted for him. You told everyone they have to vote for him, right? It's going to be World War III if you don't vote for him. Give me a break. No one cares what you have to say anymore. We told you so.
But some, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle, are opening their arms.
The thing that has been very fascinating, especially about Marjorie and Candace, is that they are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you.
Yeah, it's like a values based. Like
right.
This guy is bad, not like this policy is bad.
Right, and I think that we should give them credit for that.
The message cannot be, I told you so. The message has to be, welcome aboard. What else can we do together?
Essie, you are by no means a MAGA defector. You were never in
early
that
and often. Early and often to never Trump.
Early and often. You screamed no. No to what?
I have been out in these streets too long, Sarah.
In these streets?
I have been out in these streets since 2015, opposing this un-American, anti-democratic, fascistic garbage. And while at the same time, these people that they're mentioning, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, that name them, the long list, have been defending it for fun, for money, for clicks, for fame. Not all converts are created equal. And we should not, it's not just for Democrats to decide, it's for never-Trumpers who are conservative as well, to decide we should not be aligning with people who are losers, liars, and grifters, who have only come to see the light because either it's politically expedient or it's profitable or whatever. Now, I say to voters who have lost their appetite for Trump, absolutely. Congratulations. I'm sorry he disappointed you. I know exactly how he did by promising you things he's completely ignored. I get you. Come on over. The water's warm. But for the professional liars, losers, and grifters, no, we don't want you. And just because you've come to where we have been for 10 years doesn't mean you get to use us to launder your reputations. Not happening on my watch. And I don't like this conversation where it's like, well, shouldn't we give them credit? No credit. It's at the 11th hour. It's the 11th hour of this. He is a lame duck. He is gone in 2 years.
Guys.
What took you so long? I'm sorry. Somebody stop me or I will just...
How do you really feel?
I agree with S.E. Cupp on this point because you cannot suddenly throw a lifeboat to people like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and others like them. They are simply reading the situation and realizing that the MAGA movement is starting to lose momentum. So now they want to position themselves for whatever comes next. But that does not mean Democrats should welcome them into the party. There is also a big difference between political grifters and actual voters. One of the...
Yeah, exactly.
This is personal. I've gotten death threats. I have lived this life at the expense of profession, at the expense of friendships, at the expense of money. I've done it. It's been hard, but it's my conscience telling me to do it. You don't get to flip a switch and say, I don't like him anymore. Can I be with you guys? No.
Do you see who she's talking about, who are constantly out there and were very supportive, and now they turn on some things, not all things, but they turn on some things very differently than you see, for example, a Liz Cheney or someone in that camp who...
Fundamentally different.
Yeah. Should the Democrats open their arms to, I mean, Liz Cheney is very conservative?
No. What I think I see...
Absolutely not. And the argument here is that Democrats should never have opened their arms to Liz Cheney because it was seen as a major mistake. She is described as a very conservative figure who only broke with Donald Trump mainly because Trump did not support or align with her father. Despite that, she had a long record of saying very harsh things about Democrats, and then Kamala Harris campaigning with her is being framed as a big strategic error. The idea is that this move was never going to bring in some imaginary group of Republican suburban voters. Instead, the point being made is that Democrats should focus on energizing their own base through progressive policies rather than shifting further to the right in an attempt to attract Republican support.
Is reacting to righteously is a deep frustration at the folks who enabled this.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden are trying to say, wash their hands.
Too much for me.
Who could have known that it would turn into this? Anybody. After January 6th, anybody could have known this if they chose to pay attention to what he'd said and what he'd done during the first term, particularly if they were self-described conservatives.
Joe,
But hold on, but
he's not done.
But a successful pro-democracy movement. Look at what just happened in Hungary. Look at the study of successful pro-democracy movements. They've got to be positive, patriotic, and inclusive. Positive, patriotic, and inclusive. So it's good to castigate the corruption and the rising costs and the cronyism and the chaos and cruelty, all of that. But you got to welcome people in and set a big tent message. Mm-hmm. And so there shouldn't be purity tests in a pro-democracy movement.
For voters. Marjorie Taylor Greene, like 5 minutes ago, was still saying that the insurrectionists were patriots.
Right.
Are patriots. These are people who would still vote for Trump if they were in his favor. I'm sorry. We need to be skeptical of the folks who are claiming us in their name. I'm not talking about voters. You're right.
I come at this from a foreign policy perspective. I've, 10 years of following Trump. Everyone thinks they know what his foreign policy doctrine is, right? Oh, he campaigned against intervention. He's going to be tough on China. Now he's going to make a deal with China. No more wars, no more globalism. And sooner or later, everyone figures out that Donald Trump has no core foreign policy principles whatsoever. And they change all the time based on whoever he talked to last. Maybe he has a financial interest. Maybe his kids have a financial interest. Maybe he just gets talked into it by another foreign leader. And so, of course, if you stake your sort of foreign policy identity on no more wars, and we're not going to do Middle East interventions, we're not going to send young American men and women to fight and die in a far-off place for unclear reasons, unclear justifications. Well, the Iran war is the opposite of all of that. So he's forced all of these people who claimed that they were for Trump's foreign policy to either pick between their own integrity or following him to the exact opposite foreign policy. And some of them are going to follow him, and some of them are going to maintain whatever semblance of foreign policy integrity they have left. And they're both bad choices because they're both based on this premise that Donald Trump actually has a view of the world and America's role in it that isn't liable to change tomorrow. And guess what? It's going to change tomorrow again.
Joe, what do you make of what you're hearing from the Megyn Kellys and the Tucker Carlsons and Benny Johnsons?
I think Essie's right. I think these are people who are grifters. They're going for clicks, payments, or their own aggrandizement, and they flip because it's politically expedient for them or profitable for them, and that's fine. But as the only Trump voter here, I don't agree with anything any of you are saying. And the important thing is a new Q poll that came out on April 15th this week that shows the president still has the support of 88% of the Republican Party. Same poll at the end of the Biden term had him at 71%. Trump is immensely popular with the Republican base, despite all of the things you might say. None of you are Trump voters, and that's fine. Yeah. But don't speak for Trump voters. We don't agree with what you're saying.
What really worries the speaker is the idea that Democrats might start listening too much to what these panelists are saying. In their view, Joe Borelli is a lost cause and fully loyal to Trump no matter what. But figures like S.E. Cupp and others on the panel who talk about being a big tent and being inclusive are not ideas they agree with at all. The speaker also refers to a post on social media from someone they grew up with who is one of the biggest Trump supporters they personally know in real life. They still see him at the gym and talk about normal things like sports, but they do not really discuss politics anymore. This person, who strongly supports Donald Trump and almost worships him, recently posted a video criticizing Trump over issues like selling off national lands. The speaker explains that these are finally issues that are starting to affect him personally, whereas before he was fine with other people suffering under Trump's policies. But now that it is impacting him directly, he is upset. Even so, the speaker believes he is not going to vote for a Democrat, like Gavin Newsom or AOC or any future Democratic leader. The speaker says that this same person would likely end up supporting future Republican figures like JD Vance or Tucker Carlson rather than ever voting for a Democrat. In their view, even if some of these voters start to feel disappointed with Donald Trump, they will still stay within the Republican camp and support the next Republican candidate instead of switching sides. Because of that, they believe Democrats should not repeat what they see as a mistake of trying to chase Republican voters or trying to win over never-Trump conservatives. They argue that unless these never-Trump figures completely change their positions on broader issues like military spending, tax cuts for the wealthy, and social programs, they should not be treated as part of the Democratic coalition. However, they also say that if someone genuinely changes their views and supports stronger Medicare and Medicaid, higher taxes on the wealthy, and ending certain foreign spending, then they would be welcome to join and be part of that political direction. The speaker says that this is not going to happen and that these people will instead try to push the Democratic Party in a more conservative direction. In their view, S.E. Cupp and other conservatives or right-wing voices should go and try to fix their own party, either by making the Republican Party more reasonable or even starting a third conservative party if they want to. But they argue there is no place for them in today's Democratic Party, which should be moving more toward progressive policies rather than becoming more conservative. The speaker also asks for audience opinions and says they agree with S.E. Cupp on the idea that some of these figures like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are just adjusting for life after MAGA and Trump because they can see that movement fading and are trying to stay relevant, which they describe as grifting. However, they strongly argue that these people should not be brought into the Democratic Party in the end. The speaker asks whether people side more with S.E. Cupp or Joe Borelli and encourages viewers to share their thoughts. Like the video and subscribe before signing off.